निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. All right, so we'll jump to verse number 2 and we'll do lead and repeat style for that. Okay. Sangat satsu vidhiyatam Satsu vidhiyatam bhagavato bhaktir dridadhiyatam shantyadif parichiyatam dridataram karmashu santyajyatam sadvidvanupasripyatam pratidinam tatpaduka sevyatam brahmaikaksharamardhyatam Shruti-shiro Vakyam samakarnyatam. Now verse number 3. Vakyarthasya vicharyatam Shruti-shirav Pakshas samashriyataam dustarkat suviramyatam shruti-matas tarkonusandhiyatam brahmasmiti vibhavyatam aharahar garvav parityajatam deheham matirujyatam pudajanair vadav parityajatam. All right, so now we'll chant from 1, 2, and 3, and we'll chant it together, and we'll dive right into the content. Vedo nityamadhiyatam tadudidam karma svanushthiyatam tene shasya vidhiyatam apachitihi kamye matistyajyatam papogaf paridhuyatam bhavasukhe doshonusandhiyatam atmecha vyavasiyatam nijagrihat turnam vinirgamyatam sangat satsu vidhiyatam bhagavato bhaktir dridadhiyatam shantyadif parichiyatam dridataram karmashu santyajyatam sadvidvanupasripyatam pratidinam tatpaduka sevyatam brahmaikaksharamardhyatam shruti-shiro vakyam samakarnyatam Vakyartasya vicharyatam shruti-shirav pakshas samashriyatam dustarkat suviramyatam shruti-matas tarkonusandhiyatam Brahmasmiti vibhavyatam aharahar garvav parityajyatam deheham matirujyatam buddhajanair vadav parityajyatam. All right. So if we look at the progression of the student so far as they have come through, we see that they have developed chitta shuddhi. They have purified themselves mentally, that the number of agitations that is natural to us in our day-to-day living has reduced quite a bit. Then from chitta shuddhi, they have attained now, they're working on and have developed chitta ekagrataha. Ekagrata, now holding on to one thing at a time, is the ability of the mind to concentrate. So chitta shuddhi, chitta ekagrataha. Then Guru Upasadana, meaning they have now come to the Guru and surrendered to their feet, asking for that highest knowledge. Then once they have asked, they have to listen. So next comes Shravana. Shravana is when we listen to the Mahavakyas given by the Upanishad. So although Vedas are quite vast and comprehensive in all the knowledge that can be given, we are staying focused on that highest truth that all of the other Vedas culminate to. Because there's no point in studying the rest of the Vedas until and unless it leads to these Mahavakyas. So Shravana specifically here means I'm doing Shravana of the Mahavakyas. They are the ones that reveal to me what is that ultimate truth. Who am I really? Then, upon hearing those Mahavakyas, doesn't mean we have complete clarity. There's a moment of, oh, I'm the self. There's a thing called Brahman. What is that? But there's still a lot of doubts and contradictions and things that we need to resolve. How can that be this? They seem to have completely opposite qualities of each other. How can you say they are one and the same? So we follow the Upanishads as a guideline to resolving those doubts. We'd spent almost, I think, a class and a half, if not two, looking at how we should do mananam. How we should do mananam. First thing is, we have to take the standpoint of the Upanishad. Because there are so many different analyses, so many darshanas that have come out. If I try to spend time in each and every single one of them, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough lifetimes to finish that kind of study. So instead, I will stand by the Uttara Mimamsa Darshana and take stance as to what is the axioms, the main facts that are given. Let me hold them as true for now and start applying my intellect to it and see how that unfolds. Then I can come back and say, yes, those statements were true. So stand from the facts as given by Upanishad. Now, in order to make sure my understanding of those Upanishads are firm, I have to go test them out. I have to shake that knowledge a little bit. That's when I approach the other darshanas. What are the variations in logic have they presented? What are the opposing thoughts they might have? See if that holds true for what I am thinking currently. Then, can I address those issues with the logic given by the Upanishads? Because Upanishads not only give us the statements, they also give us logic to resolve that. So take that logic, juxtapose it against the other Purva Pakshas. That's the term we say, those on the other side. Juxtapose it and test out the logic. So this process, stand by the Upanishad, shake it out with the other darshanas, then use the Upanishadic knowledge to resolve those contradictions. That process will help us come to a firm conviction, yes, what the Upanishads have to say is in fact true, and I have much better clarity on it. There's no more doubts in my mind. This cannot be anything other than what has been told. I'm firm, yes. But how many of us know a lot of good things? We know what is right, what is wrong, and we have no doubts about it either. And yet we seem to have a hard time following it. Just like how that is in our day-to-day life, the same thing applies here. Although I have firm conviction, I am Brahman, there is no other confusion here, I still don't see myself practicing it. I don't live like I'm Brahman. There's this residual habits in our mind that are left behind. I have to fix those unconscious habits. That is a process of nididhyasanam. So, that was just a quick run through of where we have been. Chitta Shuddhi, Chitta Ekagrata, Guru Upasadana, then Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Finally, there's one more step we will come to touch upon today, is Samadhi. When I've practiced Nididhyasanam so much, what does that end state actually look like? What does it feel like? We will see as Samadhi at the very end. So, when it comes to the actual place we were in our text here. Sorry, I think I ran ahead of myself just a little bit here. Cool. So now we are in verse number 3. The line specifically we're looking at. Oops. Brahma smiti vibhavyatam. Brahma asmi iti vibhavyatam. This is the statement of Nididhyasanam. Having all this clarity, how do I make sure that I'm actually practicing this? So we'll look into a little bit of details of that today. Brahma asmi, I am Brahman. This is not a new thing. This is not a new statement. We've heard this in the step of Shravana. And we've constantly contemplated on this in Manana step. But at the same time, there's this experience that's not coming. Now, Swami Sarveshanji gave a very clear definition of what Nididhyasanam is. It is a practice of removing erroneous, habitual thought patterns. Erroneous, habitual thought patterns. Now, the analogy we can take, a couple of examples is, there's a doctor, right? And he is an expert in diagnosing the systems of the liver. So he's done all his thorough study. He specializes in the liver. And so what does he know best? Alcoholism is not good. It will destroy your liver. What is the actual term when it starts? Cirrhosis? Yeah. So he very well has studied the understanding of what cirrhosis is, what causes it, what are its implications, how does it destroy the liver. But do we not still see that same doctor when he goes home? He gets a glass of wine. Sometimes he gets so stressed out that over time he himself has developed alcoholism. Sometimes we'll see this, right? A drunk doctor, the most ironic statement. Why? Because although he may have absolute clarity, conviction, and understanding of how it works, there are certain tendencies within us that are hard to overcome with just conviction, with a snap of conviction. He needs to put an effort to overcome those erroneous, habitual thought patterns. So, in the same way, we have spent so many lifetimes as this individual BMI. I am this limited entity. I only have a certain amount of knowledge. I only have a certain amount of capacity. I am in a world that has duality. Either you're my friend or you're my enemy. Either I experience happiness or sorrow. The sense of limitation and constant change is what I've been used to. Not just in one lifetime, all of those lifetimes. The fact that I'm born is the fact that I think I am this individual entity. This is the long, habitual, erroneous thought patterns that have existed in me from lifetime to lifetime. This is what's being tackled in Nididhyasanam. So, here, when we say Brahma smiti vibhavyatam, it's not just sitting down in the seat of meditation and doing japa on Brahma, soham, I am him, I am that. It's not a japa. That japa has been done before. When we did Omkara Upasana, when we did japa in Vanaprastha, that's japa. This is different. Brahma smiti vibhavyatam. Bhavana is the key word here. Bhavana is a very interesting word to translate. There's no English equivalent to that word. It's not a thought. It's not just a feeling. It's not a mechanical repetition of a thought. It's this sense of conscious, alive understanding. I am this and I feel it. And it's not an emotional feeling. If I were to ask you, who are you? And forget trying to describe it, your sense of I am me. There's no repetition of thought. It's not a conscious, like a single thought that goes through my mind saying I am me. It's this ubiquitous, continuous feeling, this is who I am. That's what we mean by bhavana. That bhavana has to change from I am this limited entity to I am that substratum. I am that reality. There's no doubts about it. So this Brahma Smiti Vibhavyatam is to that extent. We've come to Nididhyasana. So in a way of emphasizing, there is a thought, Brahma Smiti. Then we give it some feeling. Yeah, I am Brahman. I am Brahman. Then over time, with enough practice, it becomes a state of being. I am Brahman. I've said the same sentence 3 times, but each time there's some difference, right? There's some sinking in that happens. This is what Nididhyasana is all about. Now, there was a story I heard. When we say this bhavana, what is this gravity behind this bhavana we're talking about? The Swamiji was with Puja Gurudev at that time. And a devotee had come to Gurudev and he said, Guru, how are we supposed to chant the name of Bhagwan? I know we say, do japa, do kirtana, but how are you supposed to chant his name? So Puja Gurudev said, you want to see? He said, okay, everybody else leave the room. Of course, this brahmachari at that time was with him. He said he could stay. So he was able to observe this instant. Everybody else left the room and they shut the door. Then all of a sudden, and I'm not going to enact this, you can only imagine Puja Gurudev, who's like almost 7 feet tall, with his grandeur status, he stands up, puts his 2 hands out, and he says, Krishna! And calls. And with just that one call, the hair on his arms were standing up, tears were rolling down his face, and he said, this is how you shout for Bhagwan. You put your entire being into that feeling and ask and call to Bhagwan. This reminds me of Gajendra Moksha. Can you imagine? He's on the brink of death and he's asking for Krishna. Krishna, Krishna. You ask for him. So this is shouting for Bhagwan. Now imagine shouting for your own essence. I am Brahman. There's no other reality to this. So in this way, this bhavana is far more powerful, far more deep in its connection with who we are. It's no longer just a fact. It's no longer a practice of thought. It is no longer a feeling. It is becoming who I truly am. This is a practice of Nididhyasana. Now, there was another story that I had heard, which was also helpful. There is this great Mahatma, and I like that today 6th grade was presenting the saints of India. This is another one of those great saints in our culture here. Appaya Dikshitar. Apparently, he came from a very long lineage of great scholars and renunciates and realized masters in that family. Just to see his grandeur in his contribution to Sanatana Dharma, have we heard of Brahma Sutras? We've heard of Brahma Sutras. It is one of the biggest contributions in written works by Veda Vyasji, all the way back then. The Brahma Sutras are written by Veda Vyasji. Then commentary on Brahma Sutras was written by Adi Shankaracharya ji. Then there's another commentary written on his commentary called Bhamati. Then after that, there's another commentary on that commentary called Kalpataru. Then one more, Parimala is the name of that comment. So we're Brahma Sutra, Bhashya, Bhamati, Kalpataru, Parimala. Now there's one more called Kuvalayananda. There we go. And this was written by Appaya Dikshitar ji. So you can imagine the kind of studying that had to be gone through, that you read all of these commentaries and then to be able to produce one more set of commentary on that. And it's not just a mental exercise, it's the pulling apart of this knowledge, really explaining and helping any student that comes through. So he was one of those gurus that was able to write a commentary on Brahma Sutras. Now, one day he had a thought. I really want to know what is there in the depths of my mind. In the very depths of my mind, what is there in that unconscious state where there are no thoughts? What is in that depth of my mind? And so he asked his students for some help. He said, I will take something to be able to render my mind still. Meaning he goes into deep sleep or whatever other state, because you still have to be aware. Deep sleep, we're all ignorant. I don't even know that I'm experiencing bliss until afterwards. This is not the state he's asking for. To be aware of absolutely nothing, I want to know what is there. So I'm going to go into this state. You please write down whatever comes out, whatever I behave, whatever I say, you take note, and when I come back out, you tell me what happened. The student said, okay, fine. So he does this, and after a while, he comes out of it, and he asks the students, what happened? He said you did nothing. You were just as you were. The only thing that kept coming out of your mouth was, Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi. Meaning that when we have removed all other thoughts, when we have removed connection with this body, we have removed connection with the mind, removed connection with the intellect, and rendered all other existence as null and void, what remains? What is left over? Brahma Asmi, I am that substratum, should be the state that remains. It can only be the state that remains if we truly have done it. If it's other than this, we still got layers of onions to remove. So, Nididhyasana, this definition actually comes from Patanjali Yoga. This is near the very end of it. Remember, all the other Purva Pakshas or the other side, they have some style that they've gotten really good at. Patanjali Yoga is good at the practice. They're able to really explain that. So even there, we're borrowing what is it like to practice Nididhyasana? What does it take? So sadhu is the one who sits quietly, closes our eyes, and focuses on this one thought, Aham Brahmasmi. Then Dirgha Kala, let this thought flow alone, flow non-stop for a sufficient amount of time. And Nairantarya, without a break. Dirgha Kala, Nairantarya, without a break. And Satkala, with full devotion in this pursuit. It's not just an intellectual exercise. Then Asevitaha, when this is practiced this way, we're able to attain the sense of Drida, Bhumi, this firmness in that feeling. So all of this put together, sitting quietly, calm down, having one thought without interruption for a long time, backed by full devotion, and constantly practicing this way over time will develop a sense of firmness. This is now practice of meditation. I haven't even said this is the state of meditation. This is just the practice of meditation. Now, why is this important? Because when we practice long enough and sufficiently with enough precision, it becomes effortless. This is the transition I'm speaking about when we go from Nididhyasana to Samadhi. Let's take, for example, cursive handwriting. How many of you still use cursive handwriting nowadays? Maybe a little bit, right? Maybe the chicken scratch at the end. It's a lost art nowadays. But if we were to ask our students of this generation, what is it, Gen Alpha, there's a new one coming out now. You ask them to start practicing cursive writing, they're like, what's a pen? Give me the keyboard. But if they were to start this journey, what do? You get out that big sheet of paper with like lines that have 4 lines on them, the red, blue, and the dotted line in the middle. You ask them to write letter A, and you even have to hold their hand if you have to. Hold their hand, show them how the cursive works, how do you connect letters. Then you practice it over and over and over and over again until you have like at least 2 or 3 notebooks filled with just letters. But eventually, if you've done it long enough, especially when you're in the middle of a meeting, high stakes meeting, when you're trying to take furious notes, don't our handwriting just come out real quick and it's actually in cursive? You're not even thinking about it anymore. Your hand is just flowing. That's just your handwriting now. So in the same way, that transition between deliberate, difficult practice into effortless state of being, can kind of use that as an analogy. So in the same way, having no more doubts to interrupt this nididhyasanam, sitting here, setting aside all other distractions, and repeating that thought again and again long enough that it becomes drida and firm. It becomes actually effortless. This is who I am. So, this now is the meaning of Brahmasmiti Vibhavyatam. What then is the next instruction given in this verse? Aharahar garvav parityajyatam. Aharahar. Aharahar means daily. Ahara means a day. Aharahar means daily, day. Daily, garvav parityajatam. Garvav here means ego, pride. Parityajatam. Pari means all the way around. We say parikrama. From all directions, make sure you've given up this pride. Parityajatam. So why is the pride now coming up here? I thought we had chitta shuddhi. I thought we dealt with desires and ego all the way in, Grihastha ashrama. Why is it now that we're coming back here? This is a new form or new shade of the ego that raises its head at this point of nididhyasanam. So here, the ego sneaks in through the back door. We have spent so long becoming this advanced seeker. I have done my logic. I have done all my mananam. I have now spent sufficient amount of time really honing in on this feeling of I am Brahman, and I've become advanced in this. Of course the ego is saying, nah, I'm the advanced seeker. Look, I can teach other people. You need help in understanding what is nididhyasanam? Let me show you. Who's saying all this? It's the ego that rises up. So even here, the ego doesn't spare us. That is why at such a state, the next couple of things is all to help tame this advanced, subtle ego that raises its head at this point. So, jnatva abhimana. I know I am a jnani. I am knowledgeable. I am scholarly. This is the garva, or this pride or abhimana that comes up, that we have to learn to renounce it. Puja Gurudev gives a definition of exactly what is pride. What is this ego? He said it is an exaggerated sense of self-importance. Exaggerated sense of self-importance. You know who I am. This inner feeling of the world must know who I am. There's this grandness, this floaty feeling that I am above everyone else. I am better than everyone else. Look at all that I've done. This abhimana comes up. Now, when this pride comes up, the entire purpose and achievement of Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasanam is completely lost. The whole point was to grow out of this. And suddenly, even after Nididhyasanam, this ego comes up. So we have to stay vigilant. So, how do we start removing this? How do I address this ego that comes up at this point in the sadhana? It's very, very easy for this intellect to recognize its own accomplishments. And it also recognizes other people's non-accomplishment. I have done my studying. You have yet to go. You have a lot more studying to do. I have practiced it for this long. I have the capacity to stay put with one thought for 3 hours. How long can you do meditation? Intellect is quick. We can't deny its sharpness in that. So, it has the clarity to see, and when it sees, it is natural for it to say, yes, I have accomplished something. And again, this sense of limitation comes up even in that greatness. If you try to resolve this ego, saying, have some humility. Because we say, if you have pride, what is the opposite? Have humility. At this stage, it's not enough. That was enough in the previous ashrama, in grahastha ashrama, when working, when doing mananam, all of that, humility to keep our ego at bay, to have it surrendered to Bhagavan, having it surrendered to Guru, that may work. In fact, in Vanaprastha, we said Shantyadi. One of those is having humility. But that won't work here. It's only superficial band-aid for a bigger problem. When it comes to this ego at this stage, it has identified with its accomplishments. We have to remember, who am I? I am not these accomplishments. Who does this accomplishment belong to? This accomplishment belongs to the intellect. Therefore, I'm acknowledging what it's done, but not becoming prideful about it. What was the key here? The sense of I has to be continually fixed. I am not this intellect. This intellect has done all of this work. This intellect is feeling that. I am not it, therefore I am not accomplished. It's another deeper way of thinking about it. This is important at this stage because I really cannot fool myself in thinking, no, I haven't accomplished anything. Intellect? No, you're fine. Be humble. You haven't accomplished nothing. But this intellect can recognize what it has done. So at this point, it's like removing weeds from the root. Saying be humble is only like cutting the top of the grass. It'll work in the previous sections, but not now. At this point, we have to go straight to the root. The ego has to truly disidentify with its upadhis and saying, I am not it. This is the only way to uproot that pride. So the next one, he supports this. It's not just easy to say, parityajatam. He has to emphasize this one more time in the next line where he says, dehe ham mati rujyatam. Dehe ham mati rujyatam. Dehe aham matihi bujyatam. Deha. When we say deha, we immediately think body. But we have to remember it encompasses all three types of bodies. What are the three types? Stula. Stula sharira means the gross body. This gross body is the physical one that's made of the 5 elements. Sukshma sharira. This is subtle body. This is the mind and intellect put together. Then last one is karana sharira, the causal body. Now this is important. A lot of times it's saying they equate it to anandamaya kosha. The 5 koshas and the 3 shariras are different ways of describing what this body is. The last one, anandamaya kosha, doesn't mean that bliss, ananda. Bliss of ignorance. So when we say karana, the causal, what is the ultimate cause of all this nonsense that came out? Ignorance itself. So identification with that ignorance, identification with that body and mind and intellect, and identification with that gross body or this physical body. This is what we're talking about as dehe. So this is not just a simple body. It's all of it put together. Now, there was one really cool fact that I saw. It also correlates with the 3 states of experience. What was the 3 states? I think if we go back to when we referenced Om, ma referenced the 3 states of experience. It also correlates with the 3 bodies. So for example, stula sharira, this gross body, is related to the waking state. When I'm awake, I have to use my senses. My hands are moving, my eyes are registering. It's using the entire gross body to be in the waking state. Then sukshma sharira relates to dream state. Gross body is let go of, but the mind and intellect are still engaged. I'm dreaming. It is the mind creating the world and mind enjoying that world it created. So this is now related to sukshma. Then you go into the deep sleep state. What are you still identified with? That state of I know nothing. So deep sleep state correlates with karana sharira. Anyway, this was a fun fact that I found and I thought I'd share this. But when we say deha, it's all of these 3, all 3 states, all 3 forms of body. Aham matihi, thinking that I am that. Aham matihi bujyatam. Or it's more like ujjatam. To break that sandhi, the root word is still tyaj, to let go. So give up the notion that I am all of these 3 bodies. So how does this sound when we're trying to combat this ego? Who has done this Shravanam? Not me. Who has done this Mananam? Not me. That was the mind and intellect. Who has done this Nididhyasanam? Again, not me. It was the mind and intellect. I am not the mind and intellect. Why should I identify with them? This constant practice is how I give up this I-ness with the upadhis. This is the real solution for the ego that arises at this level of progression. So again, when it comes to dealing with ego, I know we're not here yet, so we need a reminder. How do I deal with ego in the previous states? When we are performing actions, we ask, who actually gave me all of these abilities to perform this act? Ishvara. Who's giving me the results of all of my actions? Ishvara. So exactly what belongs to me? Nothing. Then, as we progress a little bit more, we develop this sense of humility. How dare this ego rise up? May I surrender to this guru? I know nothing. In the spiritual sense, I am a mudha. And that's why Bhaja Govindam is my favorite thing, because the chorus tells me again, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, mudha mate. You are a fool, you don't know nothing, you don't know what the Upanishads say, you don't know who is Bhagwan and his glory. Have some humility, sit and study. So that's during the second stage. But finally, when we come to this Brahmatmika Jnana, and we're assisted in this stage of Nididhyasanam, this ego arises as a thorn to the spiritual pursuit. This ego has to be converted and dissolved. Now, interestingly, this is the using the ego to go beyond the ego. That's when we all get really confused about this Nididhyasanam. This sense of I is saying, I am not this, I am not me. Ego annihilating its own self. Now, sorry, let me just skip a little bit here. I think I've covered these points. Now, after this sense of ego, there are other forms that this ego tends to take on at this point. So, the next advice that was given is Buddha janair vadaf parityajyadam. This abhimana of I am a knowledgeable person can increase when we start having arguments. Buddha janair vadaf parityajyatam. Vada, I think we'd referenced this before. Vada is a sense of argument. Let go of that, especially when you're having with Buddha janaihi. Janaha that have buddhihi. So, what is this nature of this argument? Why is it such a great sign that the ego has come up? Arguments are the best ticklers of the ego. There's no greater joy for the ego than for the intellect to go to somebody, have an argument, and win that argument. So it is the most powerful ego booster at this point. So when we win with somebody, that too who has a contrary philosophy, who is prominent in his arena, man, there's like this ego high that comes up. That this knowledge, you say alone liberates, and someone argues with that knowledge, and you're able to conquest it. That sense of conquerorship really boosts that ego, saying, even at this stage, after having done Mananam, I tackle that prominent person in the Purva Paksha, and I'm able to beat them down. See, people think that when we come back to the art or debate between Mandana Mishra and Adi Shankaracharya, they feel like this is what's happening. See, Adi Shankaracharya had an ego and said he can beat all the other sampradaya, especially Karma Kanda, and he took on a really prominent figure of Mandana Mishra and he beat him. That's not this. Adi Shankaracharya was a realized master. Theirs was a samvada. Samvada. This samvada is when there is someone who is established in that knowledge, has clarity, and has experienced that themselves. When they have a conversation with someone else, there is a guidance. I want you to grow in wherever you are. Take the next step. See the truth that's there. This is why I'm giving you this conversation. There's no argument. There's no ego involved. In fact, at the end of every chapter in Gita, what is the closing line that we say? Brahma Vidyaya Shri Krishnarjuna Samvade. Not Krishnarjuna Vada. An argument between Bhagavan Krishna and Arjuna. Samvada. Because this is a genuine discussion of learning. Not the ego coming up saying, I know how to beat somebody from their sampradaya. Our sampradaya is greater. That's not the idea here. Now, Buddha Janai, that can also mean those that are, sorry, just lost my place again. Let's just stick with that one. So Buddha Janai is someone who is knowledgeable in their field. Don't have unnecessary arguments with them. Having tamed both of these, what is the next step now? This was the advice that was given to that ego, that I call it the sattvic ego that arises from nididhyasnam. So we see brahmasmiti vibhavyatam aharahar garvav parityajyatam dehe ham matirujyatam buddha janair vadav parityajyatam. So these last almost 1.5 lines in verse number 3 is to deal with that sattvic ego that comes after having done nididhyasnam of brahmasmiti. So it's a warning. Now let's take a look at verse number 4 today. If you want, please take your phone out. If you don't have a copy, just look up Sadhana Panchakam and you'll have a text to follow along. We'll practice this 4th verse. I'll do lead and repeat style, and we'll get into the next big section of how to deal with this ego. All right, so with that. Kshutvadhishcha chikitsyatam Kshutvadhishcha chikitsyatam Pratidinam Bhikshaushadham bhujyatam Bhikshaushadham bhujyatam Swadvannam natu yachyatam Swadvannam natu yachyatam. So that's swadvannam. Swadvannam. So it's put together. Swadvannam natu yachyatam Vannam natu yachyatam Vidivashat Praptena santushyatam Praptena santushyatam Shitoshnadi vishahyatam Shitoshnadi vishahyatam Natu vritha Vakyam samucharyatam Odasinyam abhipsyatam Odasinyam abhipsyatam Janakripa Naishturyamutsrijyatam All right, so now we'll chant this verse together. Kshutvadhishcha chikitsyatam pratidinam bhikshaushadam bhujyatam swadvannam natu yachyatam vidhivashat praptena santushyatam shitoshnadi vishahyatam natu vrita vakyam samucharyatam Odasinyam abhipsyatam janakripa naishturyamutsrijyatam. All right, so now in the first 2 lines, that means 4 instructions revolve around food. What? After nididhyasnam and dealing with that sattvic ego, we come back to food? Well, how long shall we have our relationship with food? It becomes the biggest obstacle in our sadhana, and therefore Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya says, yes, we have to address that even at this stage. So, that first pada, Kshudvyadhishcha chikitsatam. Kshud and vyadi. Kshud and vyadi, that means hunger and disease. Kshud, you can, which means hunger, you can extend that to thirst or hunger and thirst. You can put them together. And disease, these sicknesses, both hunger and illness must be treated without hesitation. Chikitsatam, treat it immediately as this happens. If hunger is there and you don't treat hunger, what will happen? I know this all too well. I think there's a new age term called hangry. I am angry because I'm hungry. And especially when you've had a long working day and you haven't had food, you get so pissed off that the T is not crossed and the I's are not dotted. The anger that arises, it has to be resolved. Hunger is the fuel gauge on your dashboard. When the body has expended X amount of energy, the yellow light will come on, eventually the red light will come on, and then it starts to heat up, really telling you, refill the tank, please, I am hungry. And the same way, the body will tell us when it needs that energy. Honestly, this is a very interesting statement I heard, and I want to repeat it here. It's a joy to feel hunger when the energy comes down to red. Why? Because it tells us we're alive. It is a joy to feel that it is doing what it's supposed to. And I thought about this for a while. How many of us have actually truly gone hungry? Like, we're not just talking about 6-8 hours. I'm talking about, have we lived in a time where we didn't have food on the table for like weeks at a time? Have we actually experienced poverty? I mean, that's our prarabdha and punya, that we haven't gone a single day in our life not knowing the true feeling of hunger. That, it's a joy to even feel that. And apparently now there was a story, this was in one of the Vidyalaya schools. The principal there was asking the child, when you feel hunger, he was about to give a lesson, and the small kid of like 5 or 6 raised his hand and says, I don't feel hunger. What is hunger? Isn't it like a joy to realize that a child has never felt hunger? It's a precious feeling. So when we are hungry, we must resolve it. That doesn't mean that we force ourselves to eat only once a day. I'm a sadhu. I have to be very mindful of my eating. I only eat once a day. When you're hungry, it is natural. Every 6 hours or so, it will want its refuel. When it happens, feed it. In fact, the recommendation, I think it comes from Ayurveda, is if you were to split your stomach into 4 parts, fill it 2 parts with food, 1 part with water, and 1 part with air. That is the best balance for consuming food in that moment to fulfill that feeling of hunger. This is the proper balanced way of eating. Now, the word is chikitsatam. Treat it. Treat your hunger. Not in a treat yourself manner, but treat as in medicine. So this food then become aushti, medicine. So hunger and thirst are disease that should be treated. Both of them have their remedies. Don't think that this is vairagya. Don't think sadhana will, when I am doing my sadhana, when I'm meditating or when I'm doing japa, I will think, I cannot have my food. No. Treat it like another area of your sadhana. And pratidinam, that was the other word that's added. Pratidinam chikitsatam kshud. Daily treat it. Why is this? If you're treating a cold or a flu or any of those bacterial things, don't we give antibiotic, regimen? That's the word, regimen. Even after having felt better, don't the doctors yell at you and saying, please complete the full course, otherwise your disease will come back. So even in the same way, just because this hunger comes, I feed it and try to become a sadhu again and ignore my hunger? No. Your full course, you have to keep treating as long as that hunger is there. In fact, The fact that we are born in this body means that we have the responsibility to manage this hunger and thirst for the rest of our lives. This disease, you might even change that compound a little bit. Kshut vyadi, the disease of hunger and thirst. That's one other interpretation of this. This has to be managed every single day so long as that disease exists. So, till you are alive, you must manage this. Now, how am I supposed to manage this eating? He gives the advice in the next pada, which is, let me make sure I say it right. Pratidinam bhikshaushadam bhujyatam. Bhiksha. Bhiksha is alms, right? Now, when we think about sannyasis, especially back in India, I had a very interesting conversation with a relative of mine when I told them I wanted to take sannyasi or follow the path of sannyasi. They, at one point, were like, who do you want to be, a beggar on the street asking for bhiksha? This is the connotation that has revolved now around the word bhiksha. But let's see the reverence that's actually there behind this practice. Bhikshaushadam. We ask for medicine. So here, there is this, when I first came back, and before we eat every meal, of course we chant Brahmarpanam. But there is another shloka that I had to learn before I eat, and this comes from Annapurna Stotram. Annapurne Sada Purne Shankara Pranavallave Jnana Vairagya Siddhyartam Bhiksham Dehi Chaparvati. How is my bhiksha like? See, usually when bhiksha is done in India, the student leaves the ashram, goes to one house and calls out, Bhiksham Dehi, Bhiksham Dehi. The mother of the house comes out and she's willing to give whatever is there. Usually we either carry, just whatever fits in our hand, whatever fits in a kamandalu, whatever they want to offer, we accept. What is this attitude of accepting? Annapurne. She is Annapurna Devi. And she has been sent by Bhagwan Shiva in order to feed us and protect us. And he is that protector and friend. The food itself is my nourishment. It's like receiving food from a mother. Bhiksha, food that I have gotten, I receive it like it has been given by Parvati Amma herself. So what does this do? It helps tame the mind when dealing with food. Hunger at its peak. You turn into like an animal. I don't care what happens, I want food. And especially a little bit afterwards when it's just enough, this craving starts. I want something sweet. I want something that I like. Karela again? The anger explodes even more. This is when the ego is asking for food. Instead, pratidinam bhikshaushadam. Do you complain and have likes and dislikes when it comes to medicine? In fact, we're even ready to bear a needle in our leg if that's what's required to take medicine. No complaints, no, I just need to feel better. Give me the medicine. I don't care for how long you prescribe it. I want to fix this vyadi, this disease. There, the ego doesn't have likes and dislikes. In the same way, when we look at food, as this hunger is a disease that I must treat every day, where am I getting this aushadhi, this medicine to feed this hunger? Devi, in the form of Annapurneshwari, is giving me the food I need. How much more respect and reverence comes out of that act? And it's in fact a tradition that some say they don't go to more than 5 houses. Others say they might limit it to 3 houses. They say Bhiksham Dehi and mother is not there. You move to the next house, maybe you get a little bit more, then move to the next house. Whatever's there, you eat. I have heard that sometimes, and we'll talk about this when we come to Swadvannam, but sometimes when they collect food, sometimes they'll dunk it in Ganga Devi just so that rasa and that flavorfulness leaves, so that we may have to pay attention, saying this is aushadhi. Don't get distracted. Little sadhanas. It's not mandatory. It's not, compulsory that we have to do it this way, but it's the attitude in which someone is practicing their sadhanas. So, this idea of bhikshaushadam is to help us develop the sense of devotion, respect in our spiritual understanding. Bhiksha is a sacred act. To give bhiksha and to receive bhiksha is the most sacred thing. So I really do want to mention again that in India, back in the old days, giving food and receiving food was such a fundamental part of our culture. In the storehouses, they would always have extras. Food was the representation of wealth. And in January 14th, Shankranti, right? At least I remember in South India, in Bangalore, my parents, or the whole neighborhood actually, would put together 5 different elements. I think it was rice, urad dal, chana dal, coconut, and the little sugar balls, I don't know what they're called. They would do a mixture of 5 elements, and a part would always be shared with some other house. That house would also share on their side what grains they had. Part of the tradition of harvest is to share food. So seeing what is naturally required on a day-to-day basis, I cannot live in this body without dealing with hunger. May I divinize this as a sadhana. May I turn it into bhiksha. May I turn it into a sadhana that will help tame the ego even at this point. Now, I think, let me see if I remember this right. There's this old Hindi movie. It had a song in there. Dane dane pe likha hai, khane wale ka naam. Right? So I actually listened to that music like over the weekend, and it's nice to always hear black and white movies and old songs. And this I found amazing. That whatever food has been given, it's only been given to us because it's the result of our prarabdha. Our names were written on every grain of rice. So this sense of appreciation, the sense of I am given what I deserve. And when it is given, may I take it as prasada. May I take it as if Parvati Devi is the one feeding me. This helps tame that ego that comes up at this point. Why food at the end of Nididhyasanam? Because while we are doing Nididhyasanam, when we are trying to, for a dharga kala, for a long time, sit in that one seat and have only one thought at a time, what will be our biggest distraction at hour number 6? The hunger will come back again. That hunger will never leave. So may my ego not come up and start becoming a distraction in the middle of Nididhyasanam that is triggered by hunger. May I have the right attitude exactly when that hunger comes up. Okay, this is just an illness that is perpetual. I need to treat it with aushadhi, with medicine. I receive it from the grace of Bhagwan, from the grace of Parvati Devi, that I am meant to resolve and treat this medicine. Now, in the same way, vyadi, disease itself. Should something come up, may I take the effort to resolve that now. The point is, this body is the most sacred vehicle we have to attain Atma Jnana. If I don't take care of this, it will prevent me from reaching that. So at the very basic, let me learn to have the discipline of eating right. That taking care of this body and addressing any issues that come up. So in bhiksha, when we say I eat whatever's been given, if let's say this body has certain sensitivities, it has allergies, I'm allowed to say no, because it is for the sake of taking care of this body that I'm saying no. That no is not because of a dislike. I have allergies to Karela. I have allergies to beetroot, so no thanks. If I have to take care of it, let me do its due diligence. My ego and its likes and dislikes is put aside. Last thing is, some of the traditions I've seen in family, household, daily living, every meal is eaten at the table. And in fact, the mother would be the one that serves the rest of the family. They would sit in that circle, and every single person gets everything that has been cooked that day. She doesn't take the extra time to cook the potato-less curry on one side, then the sweet for the other person, and has like 10 different items that she cooks. Man, she's going to complain. She's going to be angry by the end of it. one proper meal, balanced diet, sabji, rice, dal, protein, whatever is the balanced thing, everybody gets it. And what's the main rule? You're not allowed to get up without having finished what's on your plate. And when the kid gives a tantrum, what do? Hold your mouth, put it in your mouth and say, no, you're not getting up until you finish. One time this kid was like, I'm running away from home if they keep doing this. This is child abuse. But he overheard a conversation with his dad with an uncle that came who was also saying, why do you force your kids to eat this? He said, if he cannot conquer his plate, conquer his likes and dislikes on what's being put in his plate, how will he deal with life that throws him things he likes and doesn't like? If he can't manage his own mind at the seat of the plate, how will he manage his mind in life? So, conquering the tongue is the most important sadhana. Today we just saw the tongue in terms of jnanendriyas, something that receives information. Next time we will see the controlling of the tongue as a karmendriya, the speech. So this 3-inch of tongue is the biggest troublemaker. That is why Adi Shankaracharya spent the entirety of verse 4 focused on the function of the tongue. So we shall see more of this in the next time we come to satsang. Thank you so much. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.